Well, new data shows Europe is on the verge of collapse. We've seen the pound collapse over the last week. The euro continues to decline. Europeans watching what is happening in the United States, where even though the economy is hurting, at least Americans are getting some straight answers as to why. We are being told, yes, we fund war. Yes, we fund terrorists. Yes, we tell other countries how to be and then fund their gay drag shows. We are doing that. That's one of the many reasons your dollar has suffered. Europeans are getting no such answers, even though people like Ralph Schoellhammer has been asking for them for years and years. He joins us today. Ralph has been gone for a long time, and we're glad to have him back. Ralph, thank you for joining us. Tell us what it feels like to watch this from abroad, or whatever else you were going to say.
Thanks so much for having me. I think we're going to have such a crazy year ahead of us. We probably have to check in regularly with each other in the weeks and months to come. It's going to be an exciting 2025. And I remember, Clay, was it 2 years ago? I think almost 2 years ago, when we had our first conversation, kind of a long conversation about Germany. And very much the things that we predicted, I think it's fair to say, back in 2023, most of them came to pass. What I find funny, and you mentioned this in the show already, is when Olaf Scholz complains about that Donald Trump, he's a deal maker, he's not a diplomat. What does he think that diplomacy actually is? I mean, deal making is just another term for diplomacy. If you want a sustainable agreement, then you want something where both parties believe that they have won. And another term for that is to make a deal. This is the absurdity in Europe that I have a sense that some politicians, I'm slightly exaggerating, that they think the only good deal is one where your own people suffer and somebody else does not. And I think it was quite similar in the United States. And we see this change at the moment, which is quite exciting.
But it must be incredibly frustrating that we are getting this transparency, at least, and seeing all of this cruft and crap. And Europeans know that they also are having to pay for this right now through European Union initiatives, and they're not getting that. And so is there a call for like, hey, show us this stuff too?
Show us the fraud.
Actually, it's already happening. I mean, this is the amazing thing that's currently going on, that so many of the things that Donald Trump is doing are now spilling over to Europe. Even some, believe it or not, some mainstream journalists have now started to look into, for example, when there are demonstrations against the quote-unquote far right. Who is behind these demonstrations? Who are the organizers behind these demonstrations? And it turns out that very often they work on the government dime. So we probably also have to redefine the term NGO, because it's not a non-governmental institution or organization if all your funding comes from the government. The same is true, I think, in the way how which people look at the media. So the Trump effect, I think, is spilling over slowly but surely into Europe. Now, we'll see. We also talked about this on your show, right? When we define what are the elites, I think the definition that we very often had, which I think is an accurate one, is they are the ones who want to maintain the status quo at all cost. The status quo meaning pushing forward with green deals, pushing forward with net zero, pushing forward with the war on farmers, pushing forward with deindustrialization. And of course, they will try whatever they can to slow down this Trumpian revolution, if you want. But you can see that people are getting on board, because the envy that many Europeans feel is, wait a moment, in America, all of a sudden politicians try to actually do what they promised before the election. Why can't we have that? And so the new parties, the right-wing parties, they are somewhat now, they find themselves in the corner. They have to deliver now. So if they get into office, whether it's the Freedom Party in Austria, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, or the AfD in Germany, like they cannot say, you know what, let's get into power and then we just lean back and enjoy all the funds and everything that comes with it. They have to do something, because people are saying, if Trump can do it in the US, you guys have to do it over here. So I'm actually slightly optimistic.
Well, I mean, think about all the money that USAID was funneling into Europe and all of these media organizations against the AfD, like against right-wing political parties, right? So they were up against this massive United States. Yeah,
Yes.
Exactly. This massive propaganda wall. And you have Viktor Orban over the past few days basically saying, you know what, we're going to start to look at our own, where was this money being funneled? Maybe at our own version of Doge. So I think you could see, I was predicting over the weekend that we might see a Doge spring. Like it's going to spread around.
It's a pandemic of Doge.
Yeah, like there's going to be all of this transparency being pushed in governments right now throughout Europe.
Yeah, and it's the very, let's say, nefarious roles that were played by people like, Robert Kagan, Samantha Powers, and I forgot what's her name, the wife of Robert Kagan. I'm blanking, but it's the usual
right.
the usual suspects who have been behind all these, laying fires all over Europe and then claiming that this is, the independent press. And now you hear the independent press cannot survive without money from the United States. So you hear, that, well, what George Soros did was just, civil engagement. That's civil society. Well, if it's civil society, then why does US aid have to fund it? No, we have been gaslit to such an extent from both sides of the Atlantic that I cannot say it enough. I tip my hat to the American people that you guys made the decision against all the pressure from the media, from academia, from the cultural sector to vote for Donald Trump. I mean, seriously, bless you, because this was absolutely necessary. And you can sense, especially in the United States and hopefully soon in Europe as well, the wave of optimism. I mean, I watched the Super Bowl. I still don't get the rules of American football, but I'll get there one day. But you could see optimism. I mean, Taylor Swift gets booed and Donald Trump is being cheered on. I mean, if you would have told me 4 years ago, who would have believed it? But there we are.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about some of this news that Donald Trump, it's been reported, doesn't want to deal with the EU. He says, I will deal with each 27 nation individually. I don't know a single European that thinks the EU makes their lives better. The only people in Europe, I think, that worship the EU are American expats. I'm convinced of that. That's my experience, because Americans romanticize Europe. They have such beautiful food. They know how to relax or whatever. The EU must be great, but real Europeans know that it is bureaucratic cruft, only designed to tamp down innovation and economic growth. And sovereignty. Yeah. Right. And so I'm not asking if you agree with me. I'm asking, what do you think it's possible for Trump to diplomatically deal with each member state individually?
Listen, I'm not going to lie. In Austria, we have 5 weeks paid vacation plus around 10 to 12 public holidays. And the employer
you got me there.
Forced by law. And we also get 14 yearly salaries. So the actual work year is 10 months and the actually paid year is 14 months. It's completely unsustainable. But as long as it works, it's a pretty sweet deal. So Trump is not wrong when he said something was wrong in the past, that kind of Europeans, we outsourced defense to the United States. We outsourced innovation to the United States. We outsourced production to China. So when he says, listen, reality is coming and it's coming fast, and you guys either get along or you go under, he's right. And he makes an offer and says, do all 27 EU member states want to go over the cliff? Or are there some of you who think, you know what, maybe we should try to do things differently? I think that's very smart of him. As I said many times, and you guys as well, we continue to underestimate Trump and especially what he tries to accomplish, which is he would be happy to make a deal with the entire European Union. But of course, it must be a deal from which both sides benefit. And I have been promoting a kind of a free trade area between the United States and Europe for a long time. I think both sides could benefit from this. And I think this is ultimately also what Donald Trump would be pushing for. So let's hope we get something out of it.
So let's get you out of here on this, Ralph, which is just about the state of Europe right now. You have Germany, the tip of the spear here. I mean, they are really in a lot of pain right now. I think multiple quarters of a recession now in Germany, businesses shuttering. You have the energy crisis, of course. You have Olaf Scholz trying to lecture Trump about sending more money to Ukraine and supporting Ukraine while Germany is collapsing. How bad is it, or is it going to be in Europe right now? Are they really on death watch?
Well, I would say so. It's definitely in a kind of a comatose situation, but you can get out of it. So I think not all hope is lost. The European engineers are still pretty good. The European people in general want to work. One of the reasons why they appear lazy is not because they are. It is because we have created incentives within the welfare system where people who do not work, who only work 20 hours per week, get almost the same money as somebody who works 40 hours per week. So of course, everybody who works full-time says, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to go to the 20 hours. So there are things that can be changed and they must be changed. But you're absolutely right. The big game changer, because for all its problems, the 200-pound gorilla in the room is still Germany. If the Germans on February 23rd, which is a Sunday when they have their federal elections, decide that they want different politics, that they want an alternative, I think then there is still hope. If they vote again for a lukewarm so-called conservative party that will then enter into an alliance and a coalition government with the Greens and the Social Democrats, at some point, and this is the difference in the United States, listen, voters get what they vote for. So if only 20% want change and 80% say, I think the way things are is just fine, well, then this is, as Charles Krauthammer used to say, decline is a choice, and then Europeans made their choice and the Americans made theirs. But I think we cannot expect Washington to bail us out indefinitely.
Yeah, I think that free ride of free money seems to be coming to an end. So all of the subsidies going into Europe and Canada and Mexico and everywhere else, I think that gravy train has pulled into the terminal.
I mean, if for no other reason, while you were talking, we were just showing some B-roll of Munich looking clean and beautiful.
Berlin.
And was that also Berlin?
I think that was the Brandenburg
we've been in Germany recently. It does not look clean and beautiful. It is full of trash and graffiti now. The Germans are allowing that through their socialist government. So, I mean, we were just there. That's not what it looks like. There's trash on the streets now. And so how can Germans then say, we like it like this?
No, I think you're right. I mean, this is something that is so often, in my opinion, underreported. That economic hardship or economic problems are in most cases, unless there is some, natural disaster, a hurricane, an earthquake or something of that kind, is a symptom of an erosion of the soul, if you want, or of the spirit of a nation. Exactly as you say. It starts with graffiti. It starts with, the trains are no longer on time. It starts with you no longer update the infrastructure. I mean, problems that in parts the United States had as well, but everybody's hoping now, and it looks like Trump, and Trump is going to reverse it. But for me, this has always been an expression of deeper cultural issues. And this is now the question in Germany. Do you want to be a great power? Or at least a European power? Do you want to be an economic powerhouse, or do you want to be an open-air museum that is, the extension of a European caliphate? And that is more or less the decision the Europeans have to make.
Yeah.
Right. Wide open borders and illegal immigrants trashing their economy and all sorts of violence, and we hear that on a regular basis as well. Ralph, great to see you as always. You can check out Ralph. He hosts Hammer Time, and he's follow him on X because he's one of the keenest minds as an academic researcher out there on all of these politics. From Austria today, Ralph, great to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to seeing you guys much often this year.